Heyo, so I just wanted to pop in. I have just woken up. I'm wearing my comfy. These are very comfortable. They have hoods and they're all fleece lined, not sponsored, but never know, maybe one day. I haven't even had a chance to like really gather my thoughts or anything, but I have had a moment to think more about my thoughts on Echo. And I think I started to make a video yesterday, and I made the video that you're about to watch yesterday, and I think I was experiencing a little bit of anger or frustration, I guess, and calmed down and started to make another video, and then realized I didn't want to edit two videos. So I'm just going to add this little thing at the beginning of my overall video just to kind of rein myself in a little bit. I'm out of focus. Just to kind of rein myself in a little bit, organize my thoughts, and I even said it later in the video that I was going to rewatch the series and just kind of get a better idea of how I really feel about it. I still think that overall it's not what I wanted. It's a bad series. Just in the clear evidence parts where it's reshot and reshuffled, you can tell that there's a different story that they wanted to tell originally, and so it just seems obvious, and that it just makes it bad. It feels like there's two different production teams that worked on it. It feels like there's two different companies that had hands on it. It feels pulled in so many different directions that it's very, very hard to get a readable opinion that I can bring to the forefront of my mind. It's just that with that weak of a basis for a show, all the other stuff that I talk about comes through way more obvious. And I think I harp a little more on the inclusion than I wanted to. I really don't want to add fuel to that fire. That's not my goal. But I do think that some companies use it as a weapon. I do think that some companies, and nowadays more and more companies, are seeing the lucrative nature of arguments and keeping people in conflict. And I don't want to be the person who's out there spouting conspiracy theories, but there is evidence to suggest that some companies would benefit better from conflict than they would from everyone just liking them. And that leads to higher sales, it leads to higher engagement, and it leads to, I think nowadays, companies are a lot less about products than they are about engagement. And because so much of the world is online so much of the time, it benefits them more to just do whatever makes the most money. I'm not suggesting that's what Marvel is doing. I'm not suggesting that's what Kevin is doing, but I think that the flimsy nature of Echo begs a bigger question as to why we're doing these things that we're doing. I don't like giving complaints without solutions. So very simply, I would have just made this a Lady Daredevil. I would have just made this a mirror to Daredevil, where he's struggling with the conflicts of losing it and becoming the thing that he hates the most on the good side, and she struggles with losing it and losing her resolve and defying her uncle and trying to vie for power on her own. It feels like that's what the series originally was supposed to be, and then just failed with test audiences, and then they just included all this other stuff afterwards. It feels like the first two episodes are kind of the sort of jumbled up overall story that would have been what we got originally, with all of the Tehama stuff, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, with all of that small town stuff happening on like the sides, like where she's like, you know, introduces her there, and then she comes back to visit, and Kingpin like either brings her back or she defeats him there and decides to stay. I don't know. Bottom line, this really just should have been a ground level Lady Daredevil, you know, same feel, same everything, and we went cosmic with it. And I think if anything, it treads like dangerously into kind of like ableist territory where people could make the case, and this is, I don't want to give these people ammo, I guess, is maybe my overall frustration with this. People could make the argument, shitty people could make the shitty argument that Echo being deaf now doesn't matter anymore because she doesn't have to overcome it, because now she's got this godly power that she can just tailor to whatever situation that she needs. And like, why take this easy way out? It just seems like, again, as I say in the video, I really didn't mean to make this so long. As I say in the video, it just seems like they took Echo and just tried to stuff as much shit as they could into it, and ended up watering down the character and making her nothing. I didn't even really care, or like, I don't care about Echo in general. I don't know how many people do, but if there are people who like the character, like, they're probably disappointed right now. And we're giving ammo to the conservatives to just talk more shit about woke Disney and shit. Like, god damn it. Anyway, enjoy the video, I guess. I feel like feel like we're all taking crazy pills. So Echo's bad. So is Echo terrible? Am I just feeling the same sort of fatigue that I feel whenever anything new comes out, where I start to kind of question, am I liking this for the right reasons? Am I disliking this for the wrong reasons? Is this representative of what I would put on the screen if I was in that position? Oftentimes the answer is no, but disagreeing with something is not necessarily a bedrock to disliking it or to hating it even. I think we've done this weird full circle thing in Marvel at this point, though, for some reason. Echo is a TV show that, as I'm sure you know, has gone through a lot of production issues. There were reshoots, there were no shoots, de-shoots, I don't know. And the end result quite clearly appears to be something that was just kind of intended to be something else and then gutted and cobbled together in the editing room to end up with the basically 2.5-hour movie that we got. The series is 5 episodes. Normally I would do a video an episode to kind of go over my thoughts and theories for what I think might happen next, but there's no reason. This is just a movie. This is a movie with credits at the beginning of every half-hour section and end. It's just basically this should have been a movie. This is Marvel Spotlight's first foray into the adult content, you know, blood and guts kind of stuff, which to me is one of the cruxes of the problems that I believe we're facing. What's up, Kevin? Are you tired? I'll try to summarize as best as I can how I feel about this series. A trigger warning to those who may be sensitive to these subjects, but I am going to go over pandering and a little bit of the anti-woke, anti-SJW, right-wing stuff that goes on surrounding Disney and sort of the go woke, go broke cancel culture we see a lot these days. So just be prepared for that. So basically, if I were to sum up exactly how I feel about Echo, I feel as though it should have been called something else, she should have been called something else, and it should have just been a completely new IP or a new hero within this universe, and they just should have saved Echo for something else. By the end of this series, she's no longer even somewhat resemblant of the comic book person that we've come to know. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I don't know how many people really enjoy the character before she met the big screen or TV screen or whatever, or how many people think that it's a crime to not necessarily adhere to her comic powers and abilities. All that's fine. All that's totally fine. It's the way that we handled things that really I find issue with, okay? So I'll try to get into it as short and sweet as possible, but just so you know, that's what's coming up. In case you are new to the channel, I am Goose. These are my crackpot theories. I usually will make stuff based on Marvel, but I'm gonna do other comic book worlds and stuff like that. Just other stuff has to come out. If you like that kind of stuff, subscribe and stay tuned. So again, I just wanted to say that Echo should have just been a movie. That's at the top, the very top. Like it feels like there was an intent. I know this because I know that there was an intent to make it 8 or 10 episodes or whatever, but it looks like that. It looks like a show that was about something else and then just kind of takes a vacation. I'll explain. In the first episode, we're introduced to the first new element of this new hero that we're building, which is aliens in a space cave under the ground in Alabama somewhere. I don't know. I wasn't paying too closely attention to where they were located. It's mostly that existing in sort of a dimension under a dimension in a hollow earth where they're drinking from a swirly pool and gain Iron Fist powers for a moment that through the entire series completely remain undefined. They're just kind of whatever. Like now she can fight better. Now she fights with her ancestors. Now she's fighting with... So after this, we get sort of what I would have expected for the first episode, which is a bit of sort of a catch up on who Alaqua Cox's character Maya is, you know, that she is deaf, that it can fight, that she knows Kingpin. All of these things, we're supposed to be setting this up 2 episodes to complete that. And it starts about the way that you would expect, with sort of like a dust up, some like kerfuffle, a little bit of a fighty fight. And here's sort of like the biggest kind of issue that I have with this is that we're kind of following Maya from when she's a kid to when she's an adult to when she's like, you know, Kingpin's henchman or whatever. But we're kind of really grounding this like way too much almost in the fact that Maya, for some reason, doesn't know how to fight very well when she's coming into this mafia sort of crime family world. But her dad was like a hood. Her dad worked for like bad guys. And so she would have grown up around all that stuff. She wouldn't have been a averse to violence. She's fought a bunch. She knows martial arts. Like, I don't understand why she freezes first, which is fine. You know, like, she's nervous. It's her first job. She freezes. But this is also where we sort of get the first departure from her comic book self, in which, if you didn't know, in the comics, she's able to mimic abilities in very the same way as Taskmaster. But she can even get down to like Bullseye's accuracy. She's that good at mimicking people's abilities. In Hawkeye, she appeared to simply just have like something like an eidetic memory, like she's able to just sort of repeat things when someone does it. But even then, we didn't really see a lot of that. We only saw maybe like one instance of that when she was very young, and then that was it. We get the same thing here, but we also get aliens in a dimension cave, and it's strange. Her ability is that she's supposed to be able to mimic people. And we see like what should have been the coolest moment of the entire series, which is fucking Charlie Cox Daredevil. Like, he shows up, he says hi, beats her up, bye, and that's it. Like, so here, what I think might have happened along the way is that they had 8 episodes or 10 episodes or however many they were going to have, and the test audiences hated it. And it was going to be something more akin to Daredevil's first season, where you see a bit of like someone learning how to become a vigilante and then becoming a vigilante, failing, defeating a big guy, and then starting a season 2 as the vigilante proper. Like that this is sort of the origin season. This is her sort of trying to learn who she is and her identity, and then use that as power to overcome her enemies. She does that, but it's in a really different way. So one of the songs that's playing at this moment is also featured in a TV show called Wayne, which if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. They're trying to bring it back. It was canceled. It was on Amazon Television, and yeah, you should see it. Look at it, caress it, get friendly with it. So anyway, we see Charlie Cox as Daredevil with a really cool set of sticks. They're called something, but I don't remember what they are. And he does a little beat 'em up. They do a little punchy punch, and it's over about as quickly as it began. I believe the sequence lasts like 30 seconds. And originally I thought that this was going to be sort of the solution. This is what happened. So the series sucked. So what they did was they chopped it up, they added a superpower, and then they basically just made it a montage of all the fights that they would have included if the show hadn't sucked. But they didn't do that, and it's even worse. So she kills Kingpin, quote unquote, goes on the run, and goes back to the town that she lived in with her dad when she was growing up with her mom, the town that they're from. This is sort of like that heroes return home, you know, that kind of thing where Jason Bourne goes back to his childhood home, or where Jessica Jones goes back to her childhood home, or, you know. But if you notice, usually that happens towards the end of that, when they're like at their worst, when just before the big final battle. I have a feeling that's what this was supposed to be. Like, I have a feeling that in the original series, she was going to get beaten like hard, like there was going to be that fight with Daredevil, and then maybe this was her, like, you know, I've failed moment, and then I've got to do the "you're the best around" montage so that I can become more powerful and then go back and defeat the bad guy. But it's chopped up so badly that this is now featured at the beginning. She does this thing at the beginning when she returns home, when she's on the run. And so now we're at the reservation. Now we're not in New York anymore. Now we have nothing to tie Maya to the MCU proper. We have nothing to tie her to anything else except for Kingpin. And why is he in this so much? So anyway, episode 1 ends when they're in like they stand on a tower, and he says, if you don't see your friend, it's gonna break your heart. Like, he could have told her that in the bowling alley. I don't know why we're going all these different places. And it kind of goes along with something that happens in the second episode, which we'll get to here in just a second. By the way, shout out to the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. I love the song that they play in as Echo's title song. Is very good. And by the way, it's so cool that they're doing this indigenous culture thing. And before you racists say anything, if we hadn't had all that racism in the 60s and 50s and all that before, and all the slavery and everything, if we hadn't had all of that, and then the anti-gay stuff in the 80s and 70s, and the resurgence of the civil rights movement in the 80s, and redlining and all that stuff, if we didn't have any of that, they wouldn't need to be so heavy-handed with these cultural references, because these people who are marginalized, their voices need to be heard too. And the other side of things has been saying, we've heard your voice, you're pandering, you guys don't really care, or even just being racist. Like, it makes it very, very difficult for society to get back on track when people push back so much and so often and for so long. So for those anti-woke people, the people who are like, you know, the alt-right satellite pipeline, basically. They are the ones that made this bad. Your parents, your grandparents, they're the ones that made this bad in the first place. And right now we're only basically starting to catch up, and it's gotta ruin heroes that I like. It's gotta ruin things that I like, because we have to shore things up to we have to provide equity for people. That should just have been the deal from day one. And then, like, whatever. Shout out to the crews for the indigenous people who kept things culturally accurate and who kept people on track. And it's awesome to see that there were indigenous people running the show, writing the show, behind the camera. That shit was awesome. I like that. It feels good to have that sort of representation there, just for it to be there. I'll get into why that's a problem as we get in further into this series. But so that's episode 1, and we kind of get, again, it feels like they meant for this to be another thing, because we get sort of like a breakdown of what to expect in the rest of the episodes. There's 4 episodes after that. It's an hour. It's 2 hours. What? Then episode 2 is basically just vacation. Like, we get a little bit of I'm gonna do a heist. I'm gonna do, like, I'm reconnecting, and we get some of the explanation for, like, the magic that's going on. This must have been the reshoots. I feel like they added all this special power stuff. I think that's sort of where a lot of the extra stuff was added. Like, I know I said that twice. That's redundant. Basically, I believe that the 10 or 8 or whatever episodes were originally just a very grounded, ground level, maybe a drama, or maybe like a sort of a crime drama, just like Daredevil, just like Jessica Jones, just like all that. Sort of lower budget, better quality, and it's a Disneyland version of that. And we're not seeing the spotlight. He wants it to be more of the rated R thing, and I'm not seeing that. So during the heist, she sort of awakens her special powers, which, again, they're nebulous. They don't really say what those powers are. It's just kind of like, in the comics, you would get a version of, like, a little explainer. Like, there would either be a note at the bottom of the screen, or it would say, like, they would say, oh, I'm gonna use my powers to manipulate the atmosphere and cause storms, or I've got 2 obvious metal claws that I'm, taking out, and I can heal from injuries. Like, the powers were, you didn't necessarily have to flesh them out entirely, but you kind of had to at least have a basis for what they did. And this doesn't have that. It's just, I have a spiral thing on my palm, and now my hand glows up like Iron Fist, and I can separate train cars? Is that I can do whatever the plot needs me to do for some reason. Also, I'm not understanding why her cousin's there. I don't really get the need for the comic relief. Like, she has, I think that they're kind of taking like a Blue Beetle the family approach here, which you see at the end is kind of like what they do. And another, like, whosoever holds this power has the power of Thor, or these weapons or whatever. Same shit. Why has this is yet another problem with Marvel, in that things have just become sort of like packages. Like, we have an idea for a story that is a riff on something they did in the comics, and okay, so now we have the Marvel formula that we follow. We have, a very like set of criteria that we need to fulfill in order for the movie to fit the Feige vision, and that's just kind of like everything else be damned. What was my point to this? And we keep getting these bits in the second episode of all of like this sort of family drama, small town drama. It seems like they're really trying to mix a few different genres into just this one thing, when really all it needs to be is Maya running from Kingpin, Kingpin catching up to Maya, Maya fighting Kingpin, escaping, doing the same thing. Maybe it would be great if we just did her comic book run, honestly, just did everything up until when she falls in love with Matt. Just do that, She is young, she's trained as a weapon, she learns. Maybe they thought that it would be too close to Taskmaster. Maybe this was sort of the impetus for like a push into, sort of a more culturally focused phases, which it seems like they're doing. They did a sort of an African culture phase at one point, or not phase, but when they did Black Panther, they sort of did an African cultural study sort of thing. A lot of actors, the people that worked on it, very like like cultural. Same thing with when Tenoch became Namor. Like everyone was impressed, happy that there was Mexican representation, and they did an Eastern push with Shang-Chi. It feels like at this point, and I hate to say it like this, but again, if it wasn't racists back then it wouldn't be this kind of heavy-handed pandering these days. Simply in the way that we've essentially come full circle. We've essentially gotten to the point where we're checking boxes now, and it doesn't seem like we're as interested in telling stories as we were. There's a way, if you look at TV series that are somewhat period pieces, they tend to use the time as a sort of scaffolding for the story, as opposed to having a story and then just jamming shit into it, which is what Echo kind of feels like. We took an established Marvel character who has no special abilities other than mimicking people, and we increase the disabled representation by casting Alaqua Cox, who happens to be missing part of her leg, and we are upping the inclusion for Indigenous peoples because of the representation in this particular production, and we are upping the women-led piece, the women-led story, but we're not saying anything with these episodes. We're not telling a story. The story is that Maya comes to her hometown, is clearly fallen out with her family, and Kingpin chases her there. And there's just a whole bunch of shit in between. There's just a whole bunch of shit. There's just a whole bunch of like, we didn't need to do this kind of stuff. How does she get her leg caught in between the train tracks in the first place? She is extremely athletic, extremely capable. How does something like that happen? How is she so off her game? Because the plot needed it. Because we needed a Tony Stark loses his armor moment. We needed a Thor loses his hammer moment. This is where we're coming back to the formulaic part of things. We have to have some kind of power reduction to spur the hero on to greater self-sacrifice and discover who they really are. This is just so rote this time, and it feels like, again, in episode 2, that this is just an extension of sort of the Act 3 sequence that we just are making into the movie now. The third episode is just, again, the next beat in this, what would otherwise have been a 2.5-hour movie, and we get the ransom plot, where the guy who cleans the skates for the prime boss owner of the skate shop, who is Maya's uncle, has decided to kidnap Maya and is now using her as leverage to get money from Kingpin. During this episode, the three of them are the most inept criminals who apparently this guy's been working for the uncle for a very long time, and how was he doing anything close to any kind of work that required a brain? Because he's stupid. The two women with him are stupid. They threaten Maya with guns. Again, there's a surprising lack of gunplay in this show, just so we know. Like, they can't play with guns because otherwise they'd just shoot Maya, right? We can't have logical things in TV shows anymore. Make her preternaturally fast so she can like dodge the bullets, get underneath, they'll do all these things that Daredevil did in his series. So while she's captured, Maya frees the two. Then they do the thing where they pretend to be captured for like a millisecond while the bad guy's going to investigate, and then they're like, ooh, now attack, ha ha ha. And she has like this fucking she has a MacGyver device that she made to shoot out the lights in that room. Like, why? What is the point of that? What, hitting a fluorescent light does not send the entire building into darkness. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Like, it's not a thing. And then clearly there's a double cross. Clearly Kingpin can't be trusted. Clearly his henchmen can't be trusted. And they kill the guy, and Maya escapes, and she sees Kingpin. Kingpin asks her to come back to him. And that's the end of episode 3. We're really breezing through these, aren't we? Episode 4 is where we arguably get the most exposition for Maya and Kingpin's past together. But again, it really looks chopped up. It looks like this was supposed to be a much earlier sequence. It seems like we were supposed to get sort of the overworld story and then the memories, and that's kind of what got chopped up into what we have now. We were supposed to get the overworld crime story of whatever she's doing, you know, at the res, or that could be like she has to go to the res because she's in hiding because she did something or whatever. I don't know. I don't care. The over story would then be underscored by the memories that she has with Kingpin, and apparently it sucks. So now we have this. So he asks her to come back to him, basically, and she continues to just want to kill him. And he gives her a piece of technology that she instantly stops using. I believe in the next episode, she just gets rid of it. And then we learn how Maya's mom, I guess, was a healer, and like how shit's special. And we've already been seeing that as viewers, so that doesn't make any sense. That's not a reveal to us. It's not special. It's not cool. It's whatever. Then Kingpin says, oh, hey, I'm going to leave. And then he decides to not leave for whatever reason. I guess it's because he like lost track of her or whatever. But like, why? Who gives a shit? What is the point of any of this? He loses her, he gets her. He loses her, he gets her. He loses her, he gets her. He loves her, he hates her. He loves her, he hates her. Kills him, he's alive. She kills him, he's alive. Like, this is just, there's no reason for any of this. Like, and why couldn't we just tell extra stuff about Kingpin? Like, why is he so... It doesn't matter that if they wanted to do a series about Kingpin, they should have done a series about Kingpin. If they wanted to do a series about something that they were going to make up new for whatever reason, whether it's to be culturally inclusive or to just come up with a new IP or something, whatever they could have done something else. They could have called this something else. It felt like they had this property that they didn't know what to do with, and they were like, let's jam a whole bunch of shit into it and see if people like that, or see what people like and carry that over to the next project. This is a bad outing for a first Spotlight thing. It's just, it's a poor attempt, and it's sad. So Kingpin gives Maya the hammer from his dad, which means nothing right now because we had no buildup, we had no slow burn, we had no getting to know him, this new version of Kingpin, even though it's supposed to be canon. Like, we didn't have any time to get to know any of this stuff, so we have no background. We just kind of have like, he's an evil guy, he's like supposed to be similar to the comic book Kingpin because he's wearing a white suit and he's fat, whatever. Like, this could have been done so different. And then they have like so he finds out that her grandma is there, and that's why she's there, and there's a party where she gets a new suit which looks hideous, because how is that a suit? How is that a suit that she's going to be able to wear? It looks like it's not hideous, it looks beautiful, but it's not at all going to work for her. It's just not practical. It doesn't look comfortable. It doesn't look like she could fight in that. They wanted to have an indigenous people's costume that was mixed with a Marvel hero costume, and that's great. But make it functional, make it look like it's battle ready, make it instead of a ceremonial dress. Again, this is what I was talking about, coming around full circle. You go around full circle with acceptance into accidental ableism or accidental transphobia or accidental whatever, when you set a situation up to be like, hey, look at how Native American we can get, and the hero suit is like is only really missing like a big feathered headdress. Like, it feels heavy-handed, and it feels like too much. And I am the first person who would go on Twitter and rage tweet about some, right-wing guy doing like some anti-SJW woke bullshit. But there is a point to which it can be deceiving or manipulative for a company to use inclusion as a stepping stone for a property. It doesn't feel like 100% they were doing it like they were doing it in this case, but this is gonna be ammo for them. This is going to be easy for people to pick apart and say, y'all just wanted to be Native American people doing Native American things, saying, how can we be Native American today? And I hate to harp on it, but I feel like we are so beyond the point of just including things and just providing representation. It should be organic, in my opinion. It should be something that we just did from the beginning. It should just be, sometimes there's a black Tony Stark, sometimes there's a black Steve Rogers, and we don't need to make a new character. Sometimes it just happens to be like that. There was a black Catwoman. Like, I don't think that it needs to be the kind of thing where we go, how can we change the story to fit this stuff in it? It becomes dense, and it becomes unacceptable to the people who like it in the first place, which is the people that you're trying to target, right? Like, you want to bring comic book fans back to the movie theaters, right? Like, you don't just want kids and their parents to come and see this stuff, and you don't just want people who are susceptible to this ham-fisted, heavy-handed type of pandering stuff to go and see that stuff. That's not who your fan base is. I know that this makes me sound like an angry neckbeard, but for real. Like, I mean this with all due respect. I love Marvel and I like everything I've been seeing. I may not love the stuff I've been seeing, but I still like it all. And I believe that inclusion is important. And again, I will say it till I am blue in the face. If the racist hadn't made it so difficult for marginalized people to get representation in the first place, we wouldn't be here. But you have two types of companies in this modern landscape. You have two types of situations that could be possible. A, Disney and Marvel are trying their very best to get the voices of marginalized people heard, and that deserves all the due respect and all the adulation that is due that. But the other, B, is that they have statisticians who work for them that type these things, these keywords, these hashtags into, machines that do analytic learning on trends on social media. And they look at the engagement that this stuff gets, and they look at the engagement that pandering gets, that being heavy-handed with it gets, including the negative engagement, which if you look at YouTube analytics, the videos that get the most engagement are the ones that are the most fought over, the ones that have the most passionate people on both sides. So would it not also be possible, I'm not saying this is happening, but would it not also be possible that perhaps Marvel might be doing the same thing, increasing the clicks, increasing the stats, increasing the numbers, because you have these people who graduated these schools in these fields like stats and social media trends and things like that, and know that this is what gets the money rolling in, regardless of whether it's good or bad. And knowing and I know that you could say that's not possible, why would anyone want negative publicity? There's no such thing. It's really up to what we determine to be negative, what society determines to be against the status quo or against the zeitgeist, that determines whether or not something fails. And right now we are, as a people, so divided that anything's going to get engagement, and it's going to be something that is going to divide people the most, like maybe telling your showrunner or your director or your executive producer, hey, we need to get more Indigenous people in here, we need to get more Black people in here, we need to get more gay and lesbian people in here, we need to get more trans people in here, we need to do all these things, and their intention behind it isn't altruistic. There is that possibility. Again, I know I sound like some alt-right piece of shit right now. I really am not. I didn't want to do this, Kevin. I didn't want to finally make a video where I talk shit about one of your things. The thing is, let me put my hat back on. The thing is, I want to like Echo. I guess I kind of do. I like this angle that we're taking with the superpowers, but we could have done it in a different way. We could have done things in a different way. We could have done something where, like Reservoir Dogs, like that's been going on how long? It might be over now. But the show was good. I thought it was a good show. Not Reservoir Dogs, Reservation Dogs, sorry. You get what I mean. As far as I know, that was an Indigenous-led production, and it doesn't feel like I'm being bandied about the skull and face so many dense ideas all at once. So I know I went off a rant, but let's conclude this whole thing. Let's look at number 5, and then I'll just kind of like talk about the thoughts that I had in general, and then we can wrap this up and I can stop being negative. Jesus Christ. The last episode, unfortunately, is the worst of them all. How can you heal Kingpin? Whatever, point is, okay, so now she's got her costume, her hero costume. We're in Act 3 of the 2.5-hour movie. There's a celebration, which she just kind of bounces around while she's walking around, like she's in this group of people, and it's supposed to be like a ceremony, and I don't think Alako Cox is like, maybe not, like doesn't feel comfortable trying to imitate the dances of indigenous peoples, or maybe she just like couldn't get the choreography, or maybe they didn't have time to do it, but it would have been nice to see like some kind of like real, like I'm dancing in the fire moment, like this is me really confronting everything, because all we kind of got is like, hey, here's your mom, hey, here's your grandma, hey, here's your ancestor, hey, here's a bunch of your ancestors, hey, look at all these ancestors right behind you, hey, go fight with your ancestors. And then they say Echo a bunch, like, come on, man. I'm doing this. My hat is just not gonna get a break today. So she does the thing, she meets with Kingpin, he's got her family hostage, of course, as always, as he do, and they have a dust up, she heals him and sends him on his way. If there was gonna be a moment where we finally heal the damaged psyche of a guy like Kingpin, I would have hoped it would be in something that's a little bit more intense than just some side trip into the country. We have this fake relationship to start with, that where she considers Kingpin her uncle. She already had a dad when she was growing up. She lost him when she was an adult. She doesn't have really the space or the time during her development cycle to consider Kingpin an actual father figure. He really was just like an uncle, and he's like the crime boss uncle too. So it's not like, I'm sure her dad was probably not like, oh hey, why don't you just go hang out with Uncle Kingpin for a while? Why don't you go watch him slam some heads off in a door or something, you know? I get the feeling that she was probably like in school and in karate, like we see in the series, recycled scenes from Hawkeye. You know, we get that, and she sees him sort of infrequently there, but she's got a full-on whole life with her dad. She spent a good amount of her childhood with her mom. Like she looks like maybe 9, 10 in the, I don't know, when she's a kid. I don't know. But point is, there's no reason for her to act towards Kingpin as if he raised her. So there's no reason for him, unless he's like got this like weird like dad fantasy where he just like wants to be a dad super bad, which in the comics he is a dad. So I don't know too much about Kingpin, so I don't know what the fact is surrounding that. Maybe he is like, I've always wanted to be a father, and this is like his sort of version of that, but we don't get any of that subtext. We just get him saying like, I consider you a daughter to me. Why? And so then, you know, they have a fight in the barn with all these bad guys, but like she does a sweep and it doesn't really connect with anyone, but it sends like 7 of them flying. And the ancestors thing, like they're not exactly fighting. Like I don't see them fighting. They're just kind of standing there with her when she has these like arms stretched out with the glowing spirals. I don't understand a lot of this stuff. My guess is that they introduced this in the What If show. It could be that they were trying to lay the breadcrumbs with that, like they were like testing the water to say, hey, you know, hey, let's see if that works. And it worked, and then they were like, okay, we can do that for Echo, and then she'll just be an Echo, and Echo, she'll be an Echo. Let's call her an Echo. Let's see how many times we can call her Echo. And so now she's supposed to be like an echo of her ancestors, which, I mean, that's pretty in line with what her comic name origin is, but I mean, that's not like, that was just, I think her dad said that. I think her dad was what called her that. Like as he was dying, he like puts his hand on her face, and she didn't even get that. That's such a cool, I'm just so, maybe I was expecting something else. Maybe, and this, I guess, touches upon sort of the wrapping up point to all of this that I wanted to make. And again, I am sorry for any of the language that I used before, or any of the ideas that I presented before. This is not how I feel. I'm not the type of person who calls things out for pandering, because I believe that, as I said before, inclusion is necessary. And if things hadn't been as bad as they were before, they wouldn't need to be the way that they are now. But I guess maybe I'm just now seeing it. I don't know. I see a really cool looking uniform. I see a cool sounding power, and I feel included, and I feel like you know, my people, you know, 1/4 of my people are given a place at the table, and it feels great seeing multi-generational women being featured in this. And I see this sort of body of good things, but I just don't feel like there was a story being told while this body of good things is existing. And I think it goes back to what I said before, that your goal should be to tell a good story. It feels weird that I have to say that. Your goal should be to tell a good story. Your goal should be to tell a good story. Take a story from the comics and then put marginalized people in it. Then put diverse cultures and ideas in it. Then incorporate that stuff in, and it just is. Where were you guys? Where were you, Kevin? You did all this stuff like 20 years ago. This was happening in X-Men. You know, I'm sure like X-Men is a metaphor for racism. So you have all of that social consciousness going on back then without the need to make small bits of media that we can then put into TikToks and commercials to show people how inclusive we're being. This is what the bad people are talking about, and you're proving them right with this. I'm sorry. God damn, I'm breaking my own heart saying this. I love the MCU, and I will say it till I'm blue in the face. Representation would not be needed now if it was given in the past, okay? Especially in Hollywood. I'm still supporting it. I'm still supporting the MCU. I love it. And even if you guys are presenting ideas that aren't necessarily relatable to me, I understand why they're there. But we have gotten to the point where we are relying too much on the eggheads in the science department who crunch the numbers. We're relying way too much on celebrity and promotional deals. We are relying way too much on trying to provide a family-friendly experience for all ages when comic books certainly are not that. If anything, my small suggestion for that is just make everything geared towards adults and then make a spotlight that's geared towards kids. Make a kids section of the overall adult thing. Just a quick suggestion. I maybe consider that for Blade. I don't know. Bottom line, Echo should have been good. It should have been something that I could have walked away with and said, I don't necessarily know if I enjoyed this, but it was a-okay. There have been too many projects like that lately. There have been too many projects that are really just social issues, that are really just trending issues wrapped in recognizable character ensembles, not necessarily stories that are being told. And it gives people who want Divide ammunition that they would not otherwise have. So I'm currently writing my pitch right now for the Origin of the Molecule Man, which is sort of my version 2 of what the Kang Dynasty would look like were I given the chance to create it. That one is going to be essentially a origin story for the Molecule Man. It's very personal to me because I myself grew up without really much support from parents, basically alone, and in my adult life still often feel as though I'm invisible. So Owen Reese, you got a representative here. I'm gonna advocate for you. I'm gonna try my best to write your story in a way that solidarity with us sad boys. Anyway, I hated Echo, but it's really not for the reasons that you think it is. Kind of, not really. I guess if I was to say sort of like a at the end reason why everything like this happened, I would say that if we were to tell a story that is good on its own and we didn't need to add different elements that broach social issues just to bring certain demographics in to see that production, then we won't be giving the people who only have bad intentions things to say about us. You can be inclusive without having to massage Twitter analytics. You can be inclusive without having to account for lost ticket sales from, whatever demographic. Like, I don't know. I think we should just go back to just making good things and writing good stories. So yeah, if you would like to see more pitches, or if you'd like to see more ideas, or if you'd like to see more theories, or if you'd like to see more breakdowns or whatever, then please subscribe. Anyway, that's about all I got for you.